Hi everybody, it's Brad. In this video I'm going to teach you how to take any applique embroidery design, whether it's one you made yourself or a commercially produced design, and export the cut line so that you can send it to a Cameo cutter. And that's the cutter that I'm going to be using today. It'll work with any cutter really, but this video is specifically going to show you how exactly to do it on a Cameo cutter. So what you will need to do this, you will need to have the program Embroidery Works, either everyday or advanced, either one will work, and you need to have a Cameo cutter, and you need to have an embroidery machine. So you need to have all three of those. So if you've got all three of those things, then this video is for you. So I'm going to start by doing this with a commercial applique design. This is one that is included on the new Baby Lock Destiny machine. It's the one that in specific that I'm going to use. So the first thing you do is you open up the design that you are going to export the cut line for. And I'm going to do that by going up to File. This is in Embroidery Works now, by the way. You've got to have your Embroidery Works open. You're going to go to File and Open. And then now I have to navigate to where my file is. If you're someone who attended the class, then you're going to go to your CD and open that up. I have mine actually in my digitizing images folder. It's going to be this design right here. It's a star. I'm going to rename this file for you on the video. It's going to be called star.pes or something like that. But you're going to open up the design that you want to take the cut line out of. And so in this design, the cut line is this line right here. Okay, this is where the design is made to be turned into an applique. So what it's going to do when I sew this design out, if I go ahead and let it start sewing out here, the first thing it's going to do is put down my running stitch like that. Okay. And then it'll stop, and normally you'd lay your fabric down on top of this one, and then it's going to go and sew out the next one and tack it down. This is the second line of running stitch, is the tack down stitch. Then it goes and finishes that, and it would stop. Then I would take my scissors and trim this, and we're going to eliminate that step. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this running stitch right here that just sewed out, and we're going to export that to the Cameo cutter. This program will allow us to do that. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to get out of this tool here. Now, this design, by the way, is a little bigger than the hoop that I'm going to use. I'm actually going to use my 5x7 hoop to do this. So I'm going to first, before I do this, I'm going to resize this. And in Embroidery Works, you can take a design and resize it just simply by clicking on this icon right here, Fit to Hoop. So I'm going to left click on Fit to Hoop, and that way my design is actually going to be the size that I want to sew it out at, which I had already selected earlier, my 5x7 hoop. So this is going to be what we're going to do. We're going to cut this line out. So what we do is we go over to the color list over here, and you're going to find that second color, which is just, it's the second one down, Applique Position, and you're going to left click on it. And then when you left click on it, this little box will open up. And here's where we could, if we wanted to, we could change the color of it. So I could change, to whatever color I want if I was doing a normal design. But what we want to do is actually go to Applique. And then if your design doesn't already have the style set as Applique Position, you can go and set it to Applique Position. Now this is a commercially produced applique design, so the software knows that this is an applique because it was set that way. But some designs that you get, that you download off the internet, they might not be set already to do this. So you might have to find the one, and I'm going to show you an example of that in a bit. But so this one was already set to be Applique Position, so that by default said Applique Position here. If you see anything other than that, you hit this little arrow and choose Applique Position. It's normally going to say not applique if it's a design that you made yourself. So we've got this set to Applique Position. We're gonna leave all this alone over here. The fabric view, we're not going to do that. But what this would do is this will actually, here, when I just hit simulated, it showed what this looks like with some fabric in there. You hit simulated, and you could do tiled image, and I could pick a JPEG. Like if I really want to see exactly what it's going to look like, I could take a picture of my fabric, and I'd be able to select that picture and put it in here. We're not going to do any of that though. What we want to do is go over here to where this says Save as Cut, and notice that this inflate thing here, inflate 1.5 millimeters, that's a good size to inflate. So if you're doing a design of your own, the default, if it's not already set to be applique position, the default is 0. So always set your inflate to 1.5. Now this, again, because it's a commercially produced applique design, the software already knew kind of what to do with this, so we didn't have to change these things. But if you don't see 1.5 in your inflate, set that to 1.5. And what that's going to do is make our fabric just a little bit bigger, just a little tiny bit bigger than the running stitch is. So that way the tack down will have something to tack down when it comes to that part of the design. And I'm going to show out this whole design on video for you so you can see exactly what it is that I'm talking about there. But so you want to have this set to applique position and this set to 1.5 on your inflate. And when you have those things set, you're going to left click on Save as Cut. So we left click on Save as Cut, and I'm going to save this as star cut. You can save it as whatever, and then you're going to change your save as type from SVG. We're going to hit this little arrow, and we're going to choose .studio. This is the format that your Cameo cutter wants to read. So we're going to left click on that, and we're going to hit save. Now you got to make sure that you're saving it to somewhere that you know where it is. I'm putting mine in my digitizing images folder. I know where that is. You want to make sure that you're saving it. You know, if you've got a specific folder that you do embroidery designs with, you save it there. So I'm going to hit save. Okay, and now I have saved my line from this. So I'm going to go ahead and close this little interface, and I'm going to open up my Silhouette Studio program. Okay, so here's my Silhouette Studio program. I'm going to go to Open. And here is where I can look through. This little interface is opened up, and I can choose, let's see, my digitizing images folder is in my iDrive, digitizing images. Now here's the thing. The new version of the software uses Silhouette Studio V3. Embroidery Works will only write to a version 2. So you have to go down here to Files of Type and change this from Studio 3 to .studio, so the V2. So you're going to change this to Silhouette Studio V2, and look, there's my design. I left click on it and choose OK, and here it is. So this has brought up my line that needs to be cut, and it is exactly the right size. I don't have to do any resizing. It's just going to make this just the right size when I go to cut it out. So how do I cut this out of fabric? That's going to be the next step. We're going to set up the software for cutting fabric. So what we want to do is we're going to cut this out using our 12 by 12 cutting mat that came with our Cameo cutter. So you're going to go look over here on the right hand side here where we've got page settings. We're going to change the cutting mat from the stamp size. We're going to change this to Cameo 12 by 12. You're going to left click on that and see it actually rotates my my design over here. Now if you have like a set size for what size the piece of fabric you're going to be using is, like say I've got a 6-inch square piece of fabric that I'm going to cut this out of, I can go and set those under the page size right here. This is where it says page size. I can change this. So right now it had defaulted to 6 inches by 7.5 inches. It doesn't really matter that much unless, you know, if you change this or not. It's just kind of a visual aid for you, really. But so say I've got this as at 6 by 6 inch. Look how it actually changes the dimensions of this here. Now I'm actually going to use a piece of fabric that's about 12 by 12, so I'm going to change this to 12 by 12. Okay, and that's going to fill my entire cutting mat. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to use a piece of fabric that is this size. So I set my my page size to that, and so this is my star. It's going to be on my cutting mat, and you can take this star and left click on it and move it. See, I'm left clicking and dragging, and this is where it's going to cut it out of. Okay, so if I want to cut this out of the top left corner, I can move it up to my top left corner on my design page here. So the next thing that we have to do is get our fabric ready to cut. So that's what we're going to do right now.
Now, what I like to use as a backing is Steam-A-Seam 2. And this comes either in sheets or on a roll. I'm using the sheets to do this. And what I like about this is it's a double-sided fusible and it's a lot cheaper than the Silhouette brand stuff, so this works great. What you want to do is fuse one side of it, so you're going to peel off one of the protective sheet parts, kind of like a sticker. You're going to peel this off and you're going to fuse it to the back of your fabric that you're going to use to cut. So I cut out a piece of fabric. It's not 12 by 12 like I said earlier in the video, so I'm going to adjust my my settings accordingly, but I'm going to stick this on there, hit it with the iron, and it's going to fuse to my piece of fabric. So you do have to use interfacing, okay? It will not work without some kind of interfacing. Like I said, I found that the Steam-A-Seam really works quite well. I'm just using my press here to, when you pull it up, and I've got my Steam-A-Seam fused nicely to my fabric. So this is going to be the applique material. Okay, next we're going to pull out our trusty cutting mat that came with our Cameo cutter, and you want to keep this blue paper that came with it on there pretty much all the time when you're not using it, because it will really preserve the stickiness of your cutting mat, and you don't want to lose the stickiness on your cutting mat. So I'm going to peel that off and put it aside, and I'm just going to line up my fabric with the lines on, well, basically I just need it to be over the lines on the cutting mat, and then I'm just going to press it down to allow the tackiness to hold on to my piece, just like that. Okay? The next step is to load this piece into the cutter itself. Okay, now you may have the older Cameo cutter. It doesn't matter which one you have. They work the same way. I'm going to turn it on though, so you're going to hit the power button on your Cameo and let the machine turn on. Okay, and what you want to do is make sure that the rollers are set to the wide position. So my rollers are not set to the wide position. The way you adjust these, it's really pretty easy. You just turn them towards you. Actually helps if you flip up. This little lever right here flips up and down. If you flip that up, it raises it up a little bit. And then you can turn these. Let me zoom in on this so you can see this a little better. There's little locks that hold them in place. And you can turn these. That's locked in. Then if I turn it, it's not locked in anymore. See how that's not in that groove? That's going to allow me to move this. I want to move it to this position here. I'm going to move it to the first one of these. And then rotate this again until it snaps back into place. Alright, so you make sure that yours are like that. And then we're going to get the cutting mat with the fabric attached to it. You're going to put this and line up the left edge of your cutting mat with a little line that's on the side here. It's kind of tough to see zoomed out like this, but this is the line right here. Push it into there like that, and then you're going to hit, there's a button, make sure that you flip this back down, or back up rather, to lock the rollers, this little flippy on the side. Make sure that that's in the locked position, and then on your machine one of the options is going to be load cut mat. You're going to go ahead and select that, and it will load the cutting mat into the machine like that. Okay, now we're ready to cut, so we need to set up what type of material we're going to be cutting, and we do that in the software. So we're going to go back to the computer.
And we're back at the computer. I actually made a change off camera. And you'll see when I go back to the Cameo cutter what the change is. I actually cut my my piece of material so that it is exactly the same size as the piece of Easy Steam that I used, which is 8.5 by 11. So what I'm going to do is on this screen here, I'm going to change my width, which earlier I set to 12 by 12, which is not what size it was. I'm going to change it to the size that I just cut it down to 8.5 on the width and 11 on the height. Okay, and so this now, and I also stuck it so that the upper left-hand corner is perfectly in the corner of where the grid is on the cutting mat. So what I'm looking at here is exactly what I have now fed in into the machine. Instead of having it kind of hanging over the side there, I was looking at that. I decided I didn't like it, and I made the change when I had the camera off on accident. But you get the idea. Essentially, I just took a cutter and cut so that my fabric was exactly the same size as my interfacing. So that means that this is literally exactly what I'm looking at on the machine. I've got my piece of fabric is essentially this white space. Alright, so now we have to tell the software what kind of fabric we're cutting, or well, what kind of material in general we're cutting. And here is where a lot of people will run into trouble, because you can't always take at face value what the different options are. And let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go over here to the cut settings. It's this icon here. It looks like a little picture of the knife. We're going to left click on here, cut settings, and here I can go in and choose what type of material I'm going to be cutting. And so we're going to go and find fabric. Let's see, fabric, here we go. So we've got these two choices for fabric: thin fabric like cotton prints and thick fabric like canvas. And we are cutting a cotton print, but because we've got this thick interfacing in there that has like a paper layer to it, we really don't want to use this setting. It's not going to be thick enough. It's not going to cut deep enough, basically. So we're going to actually choose thick fabric like canvas and use these settings. All right, so we left click on thick fabric like canvas, and that's going to tell us what depth to put our blade at. All right, so our blade is going to be set to 5, and I'm going to cut away to a live view to show you how to adjust your blade.
Okay, so as you can see, the fabric's not in there. I actually already cut it, and I'm reshooting the video on how to adjust the blade, because the original video, it wasn't very clear at all. You couldn't see the markers at all on it, and you couldn't really see what I was doing. So I want to make sure that everybody understands how this works. To take your blade out so that it can be adjusted, this is the blade right here. You turn this little piece to the left, just like this, and then you can lift your blade up and out. All right, and the blade has a marking on it, and let me focus my camera so that we can see the marking. Okay, so right now we can see that it is adjusted to 5, which is actually where I want it to be. But the way that you move it is you line up the red dot with the front of this little hole on the front of the cutter. So you take it and you put it in, and it'll only push all the way in one way. And once you have that in, then you can rotate this. See, it's changing the setting with each click. So now it's going to be set on 6, 5, which this is what we wanted on for this project. But this is how you go and adjust your blade depth, all right, is with this little piece of your cutter right here. And also be very, very careful. Never, ever, ever touch the bottom of this, because the blade is very, very sharp and it will cut your finger instantaneously. Ask me how I know. And then when you go to replace your blade back into the cutter, you put it in and drop it back into place. There's a little ridge on the front, and it lines up with a little groove right here. So you line up the ridge with the groove, and then you retighten your blade by turning it to the right, this little flap to the right, and that is how you adjust the depth of your blade.
Okay, we're back to the computer. Let's just double check all of our settings. Under cut style, make sure that this has cut selected so that it actually cuts your fabric.
and this is set to thick fabric. Our knife is set to 5. All these other settings are correct, and we're just going to left click on Send to Silhouette and we'll be ready to go. Once you hit the Send to Silhouette button, it's going to immediately start cutting, and it's going to cut out your shape like you're seeing it do now on my screen. It just cuts it all out in one smooth motion, and then when it's done, it's going to stop and move the head all the way over to the left. You hit the unload button on the machine, and it'll unload it for you. And then what you want to do is go ahead and just peel away your fabric, and it should have cut out both the backing and the fabric for you. Sometimes you'll get like a string like that. You just take a pair of scissors and trim that string that you're seeing there at the top of the star. And then that's it. Now we're just going to peel our applique design off of our cutting mat, and you want to make sure that you don't peel it away from the paper just yet. You're going to just peel it off carefully and make sure you have the paper still on it. And once you have it free, we're going to go load the design onto our embroidery machine. So load the design onto your machine, and you're going to sew out the first color. The first color on an applique design is just kind of an outline that shows you where the design's going to go. And normally we would have to put a piece of fabric down on top of this and then sew out the next part, trim it, and that's what we are eliminating here, is the fact that we would have to go in and trim this thing ourselves. So you let it sew out the first color, it'll stop automatically. And then you're going to get your star, or whatever shape you happen to be cutting, and you're going to peel the backing off at this point. So you go ahead and peel that backing layer off, and it's going to reveal a tacky surface that is it's pressure sensitive, so you can press it down into the space for the hoop. Now I'm going to speed this whole part up here because I spend an inordinate amount of time placing the design, and then I'm going to have it sped up as it embroiders the design out too, so you don't have to sit there and wait for the whole time for it to sew this out. But I just want you to see how it goes. So once I'm done messing around with my placement here, I'm going to start the machine sewing again. Okay, so I just hit my start button, and it's going to start with the next stitch, which is a tack down stitch. It's actually tacking down my applique so that it can't move at all. And this would be the step after which we would normally trim the edge. We're not going to have to do that though. So we just go ahead and put the foot down and proceed. So it's now putting down my satin stitch. It's going all the way around, perfectly hugging the edge. And I love this because I have the worst time, especially around like an intricate design. I mean, a star, it's all straight lines, I can handle that. But like if you're doing letters, trying to trim around the edge of a curve is really annoying. And so this is really pretty cool, especially if you're going to do a ton of something. You can have sitting there pre-cut out a whole bunch of shapes. Just a big time saver, really. So this is coming around to the end, and once it's finished, my design is ready. And now I didn't actually sew out the whole rest of the design. You remember at the beginning we had the whole embroidery design there, had these little curly cues and stuff on it. I didn't actually end up sewing out the whole design. I was just trying to get it done. But this gives you the idea of how the applique part actually works. It really does work. So there it is. My design's done.